He took a ticket out from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. "Take a look. Are you interested?" Her eyes lit up. "Is this for real?" He nodded. "Yes. Brightstar is organizing it. Tickets are impossible to get now. The event sold out almost instantly. It's a live version of creation with audience participation. All the biggest players are going to be there." "It sounds amazing." She glanced at the ticket again. "I see it's next month." "Yes, on a Sunday. We can go together if you want." "Really? You can get me in?" The excitement was clear in her voice. He smiled. "Of course. I was part of the team that created the game." "In that case, I'd love to go." She usually didn't have plans for the weekend and thought it was high time to go out and do some activities. She was sure they would have a great time. "I'm glad," he said. "It's a date." The waiter brought their dishes, and they talked about the gaming industry while they ate. Ashley felt like they were two friends having a casual dinner instead of two strangers on a date. After they finished their meal, Peter suggested they go see a new movie about car racing at the theater. Ashley was hesitant. It was one thing to have dinner with Peter, but going to see a movie after would be an official date. If I say yes, will he think I'm interested in him? She wondered. She enjoyed his company, but she didn't want to give him the wrong impression. "Come on," he pressed her. "There's an IMAX theater nearby. It's Saturday, and the night is long. You can sleep in tomorrow." She nodded. "Okay, let's go take a look." He paid the bill, and they walked the few blocks to the theater. He had already reserved tickets, so he asked her to buy some popcorn and soda while he went up to the ticket counter. They met in the lobby, and he tried to give her cash for the snacks. She shook her head. "No way! You already bought me dinner. It's the least I can do." He shrugged. "Okay, let's go in." They found their seats and put the huge bucket of popcorn in the middle. Ashley enjoyed the film and chatted excitedly with Peter as they left the theater 2 hours later. "Wasn't that amazing?" she exclaimed. "It makes me want to go car racing." "Racing is quite dangerous, but I can take you go-karting sometime if you like. I'm quite a good driver." "You really are a wise sage," she teased. "Are you a pro in everything? Where do you find the time?" "I make time. I do rest occasionally, though." She laughed. Peter drove her home, escorted her to her door, and promptly left. He looked up at the lights in her window once he was outside and laughed to himself, thinking, "I can't believe our father set us up." He had had a great time and thought she had matured since the first time he had met her 10 years ago. He messaged her regularly during the next few weeks, asking her how her day had been or telling her about the latest video games he had played. He had never mentioned their date, nor asked whether she had spoken to her father about him. The next month passed quickly, and soon it was time for Brightstar's live event. Around that time, Jonathan flew to Cuba to bring Latham back to New York. 2 months had passed since Matthew had taken Latham hostage in exchange for Ashley, and Jonathan thought he had given his uncle enough time to consider his release. He instructed his men to rescue Latham while he visited Matthew. They were playing chess on the terrace when Matthew's assistant came rushing out. "Sir, Latham got out. He's waiting in the front hall." Jonathan put down his chess piece and looked up at his uncle. "I'm sorry. It had to be done." Matthew sighed. "I can't fight you anymore." "You're right. You can't. But I appreciate what you did. I'm sure it did Latham a world of good. It also taught you that I'm more powerful than you think." His uncle smiled bitterly. "I'm getting old, Jonathan. I was planning on handing everything over to you in a few years, but I think now is the time." "There is no rush. You have many properties and various businesses. I can gradually take them over." Matthew nodded and stood up. "All right. Just make sure you keep the family's interests in mind. I'll see you two off." They walked to the front hall and found Latham there. Jonathan was shocked by how much weight he had lost. He looked pale and weak. He looks nothing like Ashley did when she was released and left Cuba, he thought, feeling sorry for him. He decided then to forgive him for the way he had treated Ashley. He walked over and gave him a big hug. "I'm sorry you had to get involved in our family matter." Latham lowered his eyes and mumbled, "That's okay. It gave me time to think about a lot of things." On the flight back to New York, Jonathan asked him how he had been treated. Latham shrugged and opened a bottle of mineral water. "To tell you the truth, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. They fed me and gave me a comfortable place to sleep in. It was like being at home, except I couldn't go out. I didn't have much of an appetite, though, so I lost a few pounds." Jonathan nodded. "I can see that." "I wanted to experience what Ashley had gone through when she was there," Latham continued. "I prepared myself mentally beforehand, so that helped a bit. The difference was that I knew what I was getting myself into, while she, on the other hand, was kidnapped against her will. I can't imagine what she must have been thinking, being taken far away from her family and friends, and not knowing if she could ever escape." He shook his head and said nothing more for the rest of the trip. As soon as they arrived, Latham switched on his phone and was immediately bombarded with calls. He spoke to his mother and then went straight to the office to find out what had happened during his absence. When his colleagues asked him about his wedding, he simply told them that things hadn't worked out. His haggard appearance and drawn face made everyone assume he had been jilted at the altar. He buried himself in his work for the next week to forget about everything. It wasn't until the following Sunday that he finally allowed himself to take a break. He had a late breakfast, went to the cemetery to visit his father's grave, then drove over to Ashley's place. He had thought about calling her first, but was afraid she would hang up on him. He was ready to face whatever accusations she threw at him and planned to beg her to give him another chance. When he arrived, he took the elevator up to her floor and rang her doorbell, but there was no answer. He rang again and waited for a while. When he realized she wasn't home, he left and sat on a bench outside her building. Time passed quickly, and before he knew it, the sun was already setting. It was dark when he saw two familiar figures approaching. Early that very same morning, Ashley had put on her designer sportswear, eaten a quick breakfast, and taken a cab to the arena where Bright Star's live creation event was to take place. Peter was already waiting for her at the entrance hall when she arrived. Several players and hundreds of fans were there, excitedly chatting about the new video game. Ashley looked stunning with her thin figure and her baseball cap, and she turned many heads as she and Peter, who was wearing sunglasses, walked by. She noticed that several people had t-shirts with Blackwing written on them, and they recognized Peter, who had spoken at the game's official launch event. She smiled at their exchanges. "Look, isn't that Blackwing?" "I think so, but I can't tell with the sunglasses." "No way, it can't be him. I didn't see him on the list of participants." "I'm sure it is. I'll go and ask." A young woman approached Peter. "Hi, are you Blackwing, the wise sage?" He smiled and shook his head. "I'm just one of the players." The woman pointed at the tattoo on his arm. "You can't fool me. I recognize you from the media event." "Oh my God, it is you! This is my lucky day." Several heads turned when she said that, and soon Peter was surrounded by adoring fans demanding to take selfies with him and get his autograph. He looked helplessly at Ashley and shrugged. "If I'd known, I would have worn a mask." She laughed. "Is that your girlfriend?" the young man asked Peter. "She's gorgeous." "She must be," the woman declared. "They came together. Thanks for bringing him along." "Can we take a group selfie? I can be the third wheel." Everyone burst out laughing. "Let's not scare the poor woman away. It's not easy to find someone like that." They took a few photos of Peter and Ashley and then dispersed into the crowd. Peter grabbed Ashley's arm. "Thank goodness you're here. You can be my bodyguard and save me from harassment." They went into the arena and had fun participating in the live game and all the other activities. Peter's fans continued to take pictures of him and gave him thunderous applause when the event ended. He was worried Ashley would hate all the attention he was getting, but she was a good sport and seemed to enjoy the day. It was early evening when they left the arena. After dinner in a nearby restaurant, Peter drove her home. "Brightstar's organizing another event soon. I'll call you once I know the date." "I can't wait. Just make sure to wear a disguise next time." He laughed. "I'll try my best. It's not that easy to hide myself from my adoring fans." It was warm out, and he rolled down the windows. Ashley's hair was blown in the wind, and he stole several glances at her, thinking how beautiful she looked and how good her perfume smelled. She was busy looking at all the notifications on her cell phone and didn't notice his gaze on her. Dozens of comments had suddenly appeared on her social media profile. "Are you dating Blackwing? You two lovebirds are so cute together. Great pics. Congratulations on snagging the esports god." She searched for media coverage of the event on the internet and saw several articles with photos of the two claiming that she and Blackwing were an item. There was even a misleading picture of Peter holding her hand, which someone had snapped when they were tackling an obstacle course during one of the activities. "This is crazy," she thought. "Everyone thinks I'm dating Peter. What am I supposed to do?" She was about to tell him when she realized he might take it the wrong way. She still felt a bit awkward about their friendship. She lowered her head and continued looking at her phone. Many fans and players had posted photos of the day with the hashtag Creation Mega Event. It seemed to her that creation had taken the world by storm in the past 2 months, and it was all people could talk about. She noticed that the news of their relationship had made it to the top 10 trending list and was already in 8th place. Someone had tagged her in a picture of her and Peter and claimed they were living together. "They must have found me on social media from the pictures I posted on my profile," she thought with frustration. "They've gone too far." She glanced at Peter again, whose eyes were glued to the road. She tapped her phone and accidentally gave a thumbs up to the post, claiming she and Peter were living together. She didn't notice, however, because something else had caught her eye. Blackwing's identity as Peter, a key member of Brightstar's technical and development team, had been exposed. Someone had posted the previous day's promotional video with Peter in it and written a short biography about him, stating that he was not only a gaming genius, but also a technical guru who created advanced software systems and hardware. The article went on to say that he had played a crucial role in developing the first ever holographic game, which was a breakthrough achievement in gaming technology. Ashley shook her head and sighed loudly. Things are going to get worse, she thought. By tomorrow, our names will be on top of the trending list. What's wrong? Peter asked when he saw her worried expression. She decided to tell him, since he would find out eventually. We're very popular on social media because of today's event. He shrugged. So what? I'll show you in a minute when we stop at the red light. But before she could hand him the phone, she suddenly realized she had given a thumbs up to the post, claiming that they were living together. She groaned. Ashley's hands trembled as she held her phone and stared at the post in disbelief. How could I have possibly given this a thumbs up? She thought. She quickly undid it, but it was too late. Everyone had already seen her initial reaction. She suddenly wished she could crawl into a hole in the ground and disappear. A minute later, a new post appeared stating that she had deleted her reaction to the original post about her living with Peter. Below it was a screenshot of her thumbs up, proving that she had originally liked it. Dejected, she switched off her phone and put it back in her bag. I bet everyone at the office will be talking about this tomorrow, she thought worriedly. How could this have happened? Why am I being punished for having a good time? Peter drove up to her apartment building and parked the car. As he was walking with Ashley to the front entrance, his father called. "Hi, Dad, what's up?" "I must admit, you work fast," Edwin teased. "You didn't tell me you and Ashley were living together." Peter was stunned. "Living together? What are you talking about?" When Ashley heard this, she turned red with embarrassment. They had entered the building and were standing in front of the elevator. Not wanting to talk to Peter about the situation, she mouthed goodbye to him and pressed the elevator button. He frowned. He wanted to accompany her to her door, but clearing things up with his father was more important. He nodded and indicated that he would send her a message later. She then got into the elevator and left him in the lobby. She mulled over the day's events in her mind, still wondering how something like that could have happened. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't see Latham standing behind a large plastic plant near her front door. He had been sitting on the bench outside her building earlier, playing on his phone, when he had discovered the social media post claiming she was living with Peter. Filled with despair, he had then scrolled through all the photos that had been taken of them at the live creation event. The worst was the one showing the two of them holding hands. He had felt his world suddenly collapse around him. He had looked at Ashley's thumbs-up reaction to the post repeatedly to make sure he wasn't imagining things. When did this happen? He had wondered. Are they really living together? He had recalled that day when they had all gone on a hunting trip. Ashley and Peter had sat side by side on the grass, playing video games, oblivious to everyone around them. Was it love at first sight? He had thought. Why didn't I see it coming? They must have had some sort of powerful connection. She had ignored him that entire day, and he had been too preoccupied with his upcoming wedding after that. They must have started dating while I was in Cuba, he had thought. We haven't seen each other in over 2 months. Have they been together all that time? Why didn't anyone tell me about this? He felt like his heart had been torn out of his chest and stamped on. It was 100 times worse than facing Ashley's angry accusations. When he had imagined their reunion, he never thought it would involve another man. An hour later, he had seen them getting out of the car and had decided to sneak up to her floor and spy on them. He waited a few minutes. When the elevator door finally opened, he was relieved to hear only Ashley's footsteps. She was so distracted that she didn't notice anyone was there. Latham noticed she looked upset and wondered whether she and Peter had had an argument. No longer able to control himself, he emerged from his hiding place. Hi, Ash. Long time no see. She looked up and stared at him in stunned silence for a moment. She couldn't believe he was there. She hadn't had any news of him for over 2 months and had almost forgotten about him. But when she heard him call her Ash, her old feelings resurfaced. She remembered standing outside of the Edwards house for 2 days in the pouring rain while he had been busy preparing for his wedding. After that, she had been kidnapped and taken to Cuba. When she had returned safely, she had vowed to move on with her life. She took a deep breath and composed herself. Hi, Latham. What are you doing here? Her cold, formal tone sent shivers down his spine. She was acting as if they were strangers. He cleared his throat. I came to see you this afternoon, but you weren't home. I didn't know you'd be out the whole day. She stood with her hand on the doorknob and forced a smile. I see. Did you want something? Latham was at a loss for words, though he wanted to say many things. Her eyes bore into him like daggers. How can I apologize and tell her I was wrong when she's looking at me that way? He wondered. I guess you forgot what you came for, she said dismissively. It's late. I have to work tomorrow. Good night, Latham. He didn't move or say anything, so she opened the door and went in. But before she could close it, he reached down and grabbed her arm. Ashley turned around in astonishment. What are you doing? Brock, who was at home, heard her voice and rushed to the door. He didn't see Latham outside, only a hand grabbing his sister. He quickly pulled her inside and opened the door wider. His jaw dropped when he saw Latham standing there. Latham was equally surprised to see him. An awkward silence followed. "Latham, what the heck are you doing here?" Brock finally asked. "Haven't you caused enough trouble for her already?" Ashley looked at him, wondering what he meant by that. She knew he wasn't talking about her kidnapping since it had nothing to do with Latham and had been orchestrated by Matthew to get back at Jonathan. Wait, is he referring to my pregnancy? She thought, alarmed. Latham must have found out. Why else would he have come and seen me after so long? To make matters worse, her brother also seemed to know. She turned red with embarrassment. The secret that she had tried so hard to hide was finally out. Latham was still holding her arm. She took a deep breath and looked at him. "Let go of me, please." But he didn't. He just stared at her pleadingly. Looking at him underneath the hall light, she suddenly realized how thin he had become. His jacket looked oversized on his frail figure, and his face was pale and drawn. There were dark circles under his eyes, suggesting that he hadn't slept well for a long time. She willed herself not to feel sorry for him. He's married now, she thought. His wife can worry about him. He doesn't need me. I bet he's just tired of taking care of her during her pregnancy. She reminded herself of all the pain and suffering he had caused her. He's nothing but a scumbag. He deserves to be miserable after the way he treated me. She turned to her brother. Brock, please get rid of him. Brock nodded. He wanted to kill Latham for what he had done to her, and he had been waiting for her permission to throw him out of the apartment. He mustered all of his strength and confronted Latham, who quickly released his grip on Ashley when he saw the angry look on his face. "It's okay. I was planning on going anyway," Latham said. "Ashley, I'll come by tomorrow evening. You should get some sleep. Good night." She glared at him and stormed away. Before Latham could leave, Brock swung his fist at him and missed. "Before you beat me up, hear me out," Latham pleaded. Brock furrowed his eyebrows and frowned. "Didn't I warn you to stay away from my sister? It's more complicated than that. Why don't we take this outside? Sounds like you're looking for a fight." Latham shook his head. "I don't want to fight you. I came over here to apologize." "To me or Anne?" Brock demanded angrily. "We don't need your lame excuses. You were away on vacation for 2 months, and now you have the nerve to come here and turn her life upside down again? Leave her alone. It took her a while to get over you, but she's moved on." Brock didn't bother to tell him that he had been in captivity for the past 2 months. "What do you mean she's moved on?" Brock snorted. "You mean you didn't know? It's all over social media. My sister's dating the very handsome and talented Peter, thanks to our father." Latham stared at him in wide-eyed astonishment. "So it's true?" "Of course it's true. Our father and Peter's dad are business partners. They arranged for them to meet. The plan is for them to get engaged eventually." Brock was purposely exaggerating. Ashley hadn't even confirmed she was dating Peter, but he wanted Latham to back off and leave her alone. She's much better off with Peter than this piece of trash, he thought. Latham shook his head. "I can't believe they're putting so much pressure on them already. What does Ashley think of all this? Does she even know?" Brock shrugged. "Who knows? My sister's unpredictable, and she falls in love quite easily. She even had a crush on Jonathan before she found out they were related. I suggest you forget about her. She's suffered enough. Let her get on with her life." Latham was shaking. He had always suspected that Ashley had had feelings for Jonathan at some point, but he was sure it was never love. She never went out of her way for him like she did for me. Her feelings for me were genuine, he thought. How can I just forget that? He wondered whether Brock was telling the truth and if she had really given up on him. Brock noticed Latham's disappointment and was relieved that he had finally gotten through to him. "Listen, just promise me you won't bother my sister anymore, and we can just forget about this whole thing." He pushed Latham out of the door and slammed it shut. Latham leaned against the wall for support, trying to calm himself. The lights came on in the hallway, but went off again as he stood still, silently trembling in the darkness. Earlier, he had gone over countless scenarios involving Ashley in his mind, but none of them had included another man. He could easily deal with her anger and accusations, but there was nothing he could do to stop her from dating Peter. He had hurt her too many times in the past to intervene. Am I supposed to stand idly by while she gets engaged? He wondered. It occurred to him that it must be karma. He was paying the price for all the suffering he had caused her. He realized how devastated she must have felt when she had seen him with Samantha at the gynecologist's office, and when she had found out about their engagement. Yet even then, she had sacrificed herself by standing outside in the rain for 2 days to help his company. Looking back, he couldn't believe how blind he had been. Latham wasn't sure how long he had been sitting in the hallway. A resident who stayed on the same floor had gone out for a while and had returned. They frowned at him in confusion when they saw he hadn't moved. Embarrassed, he looked down and noticed that there wasn't any light shining under Ashley's door. He realized she had gone to bed, so he sighed and left. He spent the next few days working hard. He wanted to go see Ashley again, but hadn't had the time. The online scandal involving Ashley and Peter had disappeared. Neither of them had responded to any of the posts, and soon it had died down. A few of Peter's fans had also posted that it was difficult for gamers to find love, and that people shouldn't pressure them. That afternoon, Latham met a client, Hank Turner, at a gentleman's club. Hank was young and had brought a few of his friends with him. They were from the wealthy set in Houston. After their business meeting, Hank invited Latham to stay for a few drinks. Latham hesitated at first, but he eventually agreed. They moved to a private lounge that Hank had reserved for them. He had also arranged escorts. When Latham's escort saw him, she smiled and her eyes lit up. He was good-looking and looked successful. She poured him a drink and sat on his lap. Although Latham had been to a gentleman's club before, the smell of the women's cheap, sweet perfume made him nauseous. He gently pushed her off his lap. "Leave me alone." Shocked, the woman glared at him and hurried away. One of Hank's friends laughed. "Hey, what's the matter? Don't you like her?" Latham forced a smile. "I have a girlfriend." "Really? Show us some photos." Latham quickly thought up an excuse. "We had an argument, and she deleted everything." Hank chuckled. "I didn't expect you to be worried about your girlfriend. Come on, let's have a shot." The escort served the men a round of shots and brought out a small cup and a dice to play a drinking game with. The men decided the winner could ask the loser a question to make the game more interesting. If the loser didn't want to answer, they had to drink a shot as punishment. Latham had terrible luck and lost all the time. Some of the young men's questions were intrusive and he didn't want to answer, so he had to drink a lot. He rolled the dice and lost again. One of the young men leaned over to him. "Here's a good one. How many girlfriends have you had?" Latham thought about his complicated past and his heart ached. He downed another drink in one gulp. The young men burst out laughing. He didn't care to explain. He soon lost track of how much alcohol he had consumed, and the room began to spin. His new friends teased him mercilessly. "Hey, Latham, why don't we help you? You need to make your girlfriend feel sorry for you. Let's call her and tell her that you're sick. Maybe she'll forgive you and show you some sympathy." Even in his drunk state, Latham was worried it would be foolish to phone Ashley, but the young men cheered him on until he forgot his concerns, handed his phone to Hank, and told him her name. Hank found Ashley's number in the contact list and dialed it. The call was canceled as soon as it began to ring. The men roared with laughter. Hank patted Latham on the back. "Your girlfriend is furious." He tried to call her several more times until someone eventually answered. "Hello?" Hank giggled and spoke slowly. "Hi, I'm one of Latham's friends. He's had too much to drink and isn't feeling well. Can you come pick him up?" Ashley frowned. "How do I know you're not trying to trick me?" "It's the truth. I'll even send you some photos to prove it." Ashley didn't feel like dealing with Latham and his drunk friends. "He's not my problem. If he's been out drinking with you, I'd suggest you take him home or to the hospital." She was about to hang up, but Hank was too fast. "He's already passed out. I would have taken him home, but my wife told me I have to go home immediately." Ashley sighed. "Ask one of the waiters to call him a taxi." She hung up, leaving Hank astonished. He turned to Latham. "Are you sure she's still your girlfriend? She's not very worried about you." Embarrassed, Latham shook his head. "It's fine. I'll get home by myself." The phone had been on loudspeaker, so he had heard the conversation. Hearing her voice had stirred something inside him. He felt as if he couldn't breathe. He realized he had pushed her too far, and she no longer had feelings for him. He was about to stand up, but Hank pushed him back onto the couch. "Let's send her a text message." "Hi, it's Latham's friend. A waiter can't help, and I need to get home before my wife divorces me. I'll leave Latham here so you can fetch him." Hank took a few photos of Latham and attached them to the message. He then turned to Latham. "Okay, that's the best I can do. We're leaving now. But first, a word of advice. Consider finding another girlfriend if she doesn't come to fetch you. There are plenty of women out there. You just need to meet the right one." Latham didn't have the energy to explain his estranged relationship with Ashley to Hank. He nodded and laid back on the couch. Ashley heard a notification on her phone, but she ignored it. She wasn't strong enough to drag a semi-conscious drunk man out of a club and take him home. Besides, he could call Jonathan or Xavier to help him. She scowled as she realized he had called her on purpose. She felt angry that he had dared to be so shameless, considering he had a wife at home waiting for him. The more Ashley thought about Latham's behavior, the angrier she became. She ignored the message and switched off her phone without looking at it. She went to the bathroom to take a shower. Afterward, she slipped into her pajamas and climbed into bed to read a book. Brock had left on a business trip the day before, so she was home alone for a few days. She tried to read but couldn't focus. She would read a page and instantly forget what she had just read. Irritated, she turned off the light and tried to fall asleep. She lay in the darkness and stared at the ceiling as she began to think about Latham. She wondered if his friend had been telling the truth, and if leaving him alone in that state had been a good idea. She remembered how bad it had been when Brock drank so heavily. It had made her very anxious. She now felt the same way about Latham. Annoyed, she got up and switched on her phone. It beeped a few times to notify her of unread incoming messages. She opened the message from Latham and quickly read it before scrolling through the attached photos. In one of the photos, he was lying on the couch, and he looked very drunk, pale, and skinny. He didn't look good at all. She took a deep breath and sighed angrily before she got out of bed to change into some clothes. Ashley got into and entered the Gentlemen's Club's location into the navigator. After a short drive, she arrived at the club and headed straight to the private lounge Hank had said they had been in. She knocked on the door, but there was no response, so she carefully turned the handle and entered. The room was a mess. Empty wine bottles and glasses lay about, and a man lay on the couch. His breathing sounded labored, as if he had passed out. Ashley nervously crossed the room toward him. She glanced at his slim frame and realized he had lost much more weight than she had noticed in the photos. He had dark bags under his eyes, and he looked haggard. He also seemed to be frowning in his sleep. She reached out and gently placed her palm on his forehead to check if he was feverish. She sighed again. He was just drunk. She turned to call for a waiter when suddenly the thong grabbed her wrist. She got such a fright that she almost screamed out loud. His grip around her wrist tightened, and he went back to sleep. She felt the warmth of his hand around her wrist and tried to pull her arm free, but his grip was too tight. It was as if he were afraid to let her go. She began to feel frightened. He had drawn her close to him, and she couldn't stand up properly. "Latham, let go of me." She patted him lightly with her free hand, but he didn't react. She began to feel annoyed. She had gone to check on him and arrange for someone to take him home. It hadn't been her intention to be trapped by him. She didn't want anything to do with him anymore. She wasn't interested in a man with a wife and a baby. She decided to leave. She yanked her arm free and almost dislocated her wrist. She rubbed her sore arm and was about to go when she heard Latham groan. "Don't leave." There was a deep sadness in his voice. The room was quiet. He mumbled again, "Don't leave me." His pitiful plea tugged at her heartstrings, but she shrugged off the feeling. She thought he had mistaken her for his late wife again. She watched him cry helplessly that one day when he had opened up to her about Olivia. She also remembered how he had called out Olivia's name that night in the hotel. It seemed like Latham had buried his love for Olivia deep in his heart, and no one could replace her or take away his eternal sadness. She stared at him in his disheveled state and suddenly felt very sorry for him. She sighed, picked up his car keys, and left the private lounge to call for help. The gentlemen's club often had patrons who drank themselves into a stupor, so they provided services to either call a taxi or drive the drunk patron back home in his own car. The waiter listened to Ashley's request and went to get Latham while she brought his car to the door. The waiter had managed to get Latham onto his feet and out of the lounge. Latham leaned against the door frame to steady himself. Ashley left the engine running and quickly got out of the car before he could see her. She handed the waiter a handful of cash. "Take him to a hotel down the road. I'll leave here first. I'll meet you in the elevator once you've checked him in. Here's his ID card. If he comes by tomorrow to ask what happened, please don't tell him I was here or that I helped him." The waiter didn't understand why she had said that, but he had seen stranger things happen while working at the gentlemen's club, so he nodded silently. Ashley walked into the hotel alone and waited behind a pillar near the elevators. The waiter arrived with Latham and helped him struggle to the reception desk. The waiter handed Latham's ID to the check-in clerk. "Good evening. One room, please." The check-in clerk smiled politely and handed him the key once she had completed the paperwork and taken the cash as payment for the room. Ashley stayed hidden behind the pillar while the waiter helped Latham into an elevator. She then took a different elevator to the same floor. Once the waiter had led Latham into the room, she met him at the door and gave him a large tip. She also reminded him not to say anything about her involvement. Ashley entered Latham's hotel room and closed the door behind her. She watched as Latham lay motionless on the bed. She didn't dare get too close to him. Seeing him in the hotel room reminded her of that fateful night, and she remembered how passionate their lovemaking had been. She took a deep breath and tried to push aside the memory and the feelings that came with it. She carefully walked to the foot of the bed and took off his shoes. Then, she went to the minibar and took out a bottle of water, which she placed on the bedside table. She also put his phone, wallet, and room key beside the water. She sat on the couch for a while and silently watched him sleep. After a half an hour, she got up and left. It was almost midday when Latham finally woke up. He slowly opened his eyes and felt the nausea of a hangover wash over his body. His head ached, and his mouth was dry. He looked around at the unfamiliar room, stunned for a few seconds. Unlike the upmarket hotels he usually stayed in, the hotel room looked cheap. Suddenly, a thought crossed his mind, and he began to panic. He looked at the unused pillow next to him and sighed with relief. No one had slept beside him. And it didn't seem like he had taken a woman to the hotel with him. His memory of the previous night was a blur, but he was sure he had seen Ashley. He wondered if he had dreamed that she had helped him to the hotel. He rubbed his aching head and picked up his phone. The battery had died, so he waited for it to charge before switching it on. He took a sip of water while he waited. As soon as he switched the charged phone back on, several message notifications appeared on the screen. He quickly started to read them. The first few messages were from Hank. "Did your girlfriend pick you up? I hope you made it home last night. Did you make up with her? We're going to the new bar downtown tonight. Why don't you join us and bring your girlfriend with you?" Latham slowly started to remember what had happened the previous night at the gentlemen's club. He remembered downing one drink after another to avoid answering embarrassing questions about his love life. He recalled how Hank had phoned Ashley and told him he was too drunk to get home. He vaguely recollected that Hank had asked her to pick him up. He felt terrible. He wondered if Ashley had eventually picked him up and if she had taken him to the hotel. He rolled out of bed and stumbled to the bathroom to take a hot shower and shake off his hangover. When he was done, he dressed in his creased clothing from the previous day, gathered his phone, car keys, and hotel key card, and left the room. Latham's nausea returned as he took the elevator down to the lobby. When the elevator stopped, he swallowed dryly and walked to the reception desk. The check-in clerk smiled. "Good afternoon, sir. Will you be checking out now?" Latham nodded and slid the keycard across the counter. "Can you tell me who booked my room last night?" The clerk brought up his reservation on her computer. "It says here that you did. You gave us your identity card and paid for the room in cash." He smiled politely. "Thank you. I need to ask for a favor." He quickly explained what he needed and waited for the clerk to get permission from the hotel manager. After a short while, the clerk called him to the hotel surveillance room. She had retrieved surveillance footage of his arrival at the hotel to check in. Latham watched quietly as he saw himself in the video, accompanied by a waiter from the gentlemen's club. He looked carefully, but didn't see Ashley at all. He saw the waiter take the room key and help him walk toward the elevator. More people entered the hotel and walked over to the reception desk. The clerk in the surveillance room turned to him. "Would you like to continue watching?" Latham shook his head and forced a smile. "No, thank you. I've seen all I needed to see." He left the hotel and found his car in the parking lot. He turned on the navigator and drove back to the gentlemen's club. After he had spoken to the club's manager, the waiter who had helped him earlier met him at the reception desk. "Good afternoon, sir. I hope you're feeling better." Latham nodded. "Did anyone help you get me to the hotel last night?" The waiter shook his head. "No, sir, it was just me." Latham narrowed his eyes slightly. "How did you know I was too drunk to get home? Did a young woman phone the club and tell you?" The waiter paused for a moment. "I went to your private lounge to check on you after your friends left. I saw that you had passed out on the couch. I wanted to take you home, but you were too drunk to tell me where you lived. So I took you to a nearby hotel. I couldn't leave you to sleep in the lounge all night." Latham sighed. "Okay, I understand. Thanks for helping me." He gave the waiter a tip and left. He didn't have the energy to check any more surveillance cameras. He didn't want to deal with any more disappointment. He went home, changed into a clean suit, and went to the office. Ashley buried herself in her work over the next few weeks and didn't spend much time thinking about Latham. Occasionally, she would see his status update on her messaging app. On one occasion, he had posted a photo of an airport terminal with a status update that said, "Another business trip across the country. back in 2 days. He posted another update a few days later. There was a photo of a suitcase with the caption, "Off to Houston for the week, meeting important clients." The week after, he had posted a new update with a photo of a fancy restaurant. Dinner at Galaxy Square's revolving restaurant. Ashley tried not to concern herself with his updates, but noticed that he reported on his movements quite often. She didn't know why he was doing that and suspected it had to do with his wife. She eventually told herself to ignore his posts. Instead, she focused all of her attention on her work. She had been busy with a market research project and was on her way to the office when she ran into a colleague she had worked with at Latham's company. The woman called out to her, "Hi, Ashley!" Ashley smiled warmly. "Hello, Ruth. It's been a long time." Hugged her. "Too long. Do you have time for a quick coffee?" Ashley looked at her watch. "Sure, why not? I need to finish a report, but I can take a short break." The coffee shop wasn't busy, and they quickly ordered their drinks before chatting. Ruth blew her coffee to cool it down. "So, what's news? Are you still working at the Davis Group?" Ashley nodded. "It's been hectic, but I'm enjoying the challenge." Ruth smiled. "I'm so glad to hear that. I've also been busy. I hardly get the chance to breathe anymore." Ashley took a sip of her coffee. "Why are you so busy? Are you working on a new project?" Ruth rolled her eyes dramatically. "Latham went away for a while. We had to take over his work while he was gone. He's been working like a madman since he returned, and our workload has become even heavier." Ashley's curiosity got the better of her. "Didn't he go on honeymoon?" Ruth looked at Ashley in astonishment. "No, he didn't go on honeymoon. Don't you know? Latham never married the young woman." Ashley was stunned. "I didn't know that." Ruth leaned closer to her and whispered, "I don't know if it's true, but apparently, she did something that forced him to cancel on their wedding day. They didn't even have a ceremony. He was in a terrible state after that. I also heard that his father died shortly afterward because the wedding was canceled." Ruth's explanation made Ashley's heart sink. Ruth sighed and continued. "He was away for about 2 months. No one knows where he went and what he did. We didn't hear from him at all. When he eventually came back, he looked awful. He had lost a lot of weight and looked tired. Even now, he still looks too thin." Ashley gasped. "Do you think it's because of emotional distress?" Ruth shook her head. "I don't know. He's starting to get better. He works hard, and we have a few large projects, but I worry about him. I don't think he can afford to lose any more weight." Ashley knew that Latham had always tried to be friendly with every staff member who worked for him. It didn't surprise her that Ruth was worried about him. "You need to speak to him," she said. "Tell him to take better care of himself and not worry about work so much." Ruth frowned. "I'll try. I feel bad for him. He used to be such a happy person, but now he looks lost." She stirred the last bit of cream in her coffee. "By the way, I heard that you're the one who sorted out the issues with the Edwards. Thank you so much for doing that." Ashley smiled. "It's a pleasure. It was the least I could do, considering how kind everyone was to me when I first started working there." They continued to chat until they finished their coffee. Ruth picked up her handbag and squeezed Ashley's arm. "It was so nice to see you. We must catch up again sometime soon. I'd better get to work." "Me too. Take care, Ruth. Send my regards to everyone." As Ashley made her way to her office, she heard Ruth's words echo in her mind. Latham hadn't gotten married, and he'd been away for 2 months. She couldn't understand why he looked so bad, and she wondered if it had to do with the young woman he was supposed to have married. It was late by the time she finished her work. The sun had begun to set earlier, so it was dark when she arrived home. She parked her car in the garage and took a short walk to the local convenience store to buy groceries. As she left the store, She gazed across the parking area and noticed a familiar silver-gray sports car. It was the same model as the Thom's car. She held her breath briefly before quickly turning around and hurrying home. She heard a car door slamming shut and the sound of footsteps behind her. The footsteps and the voice that called out to her seemed familiar. "Ashley!" She ignored him and continued walking, but wasn't fast enough. Latham caught up with her and tried to take the heavy shopping bag from her. She instinctively pulled her hand away. "Ashley, please, let me help you carry the bag." He snatched it out of her hand. She didn't feel like arguing with him in the street, so she hesitantly obliged. "Thank you." Latham didn't say anything and kept his distance as they walked to her apartment building. He walked into the lobby with her and waited as she pushed the button for the elevator. She took a deep breath. "It's okay. I'll carry the bag myself." Latham smiled. "It's heavy. I'll help you." She stared straight ahead and waited for the elevator doors to open. He followed her inside, and neither of them spoke. When they reached the floor, he followed her out and walked with her to the door before passing the bag back to her. She thanked him and unlocked the door before she entered her apartment alone. She closed the door behind her, relieved he hadn't tried to stop her. She put her handbag on the side table and unpacked her groceries in the kitchen. Brock was away again, and she had become used to living alone. She still had Brock's cat to keep her company. The little animal meowed and rubbed against her legs, begging for a small treat. After giving the cat a handful of dried fish, she walked to her bedroom to get changed. She was about to close the curtains when she saw an unsightly mark on them. "Cleo, you're a naughty cat. Haven't I told you 1,000 times not to scratch my curtains?" The cat looked at her indifferently and continued eating the dry fish. Ashley sighed and closed the curtains before getting dressed into something more comfortable. She went back to the kitchen and made a simple meal. After dinner, she tidied up and opened the balcony doors for fresh air. The evening air was cool and crisp. Standing on the balcony, she gazed into the distance until she noticed Latham's car in the parking lot. The streetlights were dim, so she quickly found her binoculars to take a better look. It was definitely his car. She was surprised, because she had expected him to leave after he had helped her with the grocery bag. His behavior puzzled her. The more she tried not to think about him, the more she did. She wasn't sure if it was because of what Ruth had told her, but thinking about him annoyed her. Although the Thom hadn't gotten married, and although he looked terrible, it wasn't any of her concern. She had promised herself a new life without him, and she didn't want to be worried about his problems. She went back inside and closed the balcony doors behind her. She picked up her handbag and rummaged for her phone to send Peter a message. "Hey, Wise Sage, want to play a game?" Shortly afterward, she received a game invite from him. The misunderstanding about their living together had made things slightly awkward, but they soon pretended that nothing had happened and they continued to play online. Lewis had questioned her about it, and she had explained that she had mistakenly responded to the post with the wrong emoji, and everything had been blown out of proportion. She assured her father that she and Peter were just friends. She wasn't sure if Lewis believed her, but he hadn't pressed the matter any further. Peter was easygoing and cheerful, and he didn't put any pressure on Ashley. She accepted his game invite, and they played a few rounds. With his help, her ranking had increased, and she felt happy again. Feeling tired, she sent him a message. "I have to get some sleep. It's been a long week. You should get some rest too." "Okay, good night. Sleep tight." She put her phone on charge and went to her bedroom to get ready for bed, but she felt uneasy. She couldn't resist taking her binoculars out to look at the parking lot one last time before she went to bed. She peeked through a gap in the curtains and focused her binoculars on Latham's car. It was too dark to see, so she closed the curtains and went to bed. Latham sat in his car and worked on his laptop. He typed for a while and sent an email before he closed the screen and put the laptop on the passenger seat. He then rolled down the window and looked at Ashley's apartment building. Her lights were off, and he thought she had gone to sleep. He leaned back and tried to close his eyes. He had been suffering from insomnia ever since he had been in Cuba. He had kept himself busy after his return, and even though he was always tired, he found sleeping impossible. The only night he had slept for more than a few hours was when he had been drunk and had woken up in a hotel the following day. He had dreamed about Ashley all night. He rubbed his aching head and reclined the car seat before closing the window until only a tiny slit remained open. He closed his eyes and tried to fall asleep. The convenience store across the street was open 24 hours a day. The cashier looked at the silver gray sports car parked outside. He was tired and decided to take a short nap. And when he woke up after a short while later, he saw that the car was still there. He rubbed his eyes and went back to sleep. A few days later, Ashley went to the convenience store to buy fruit after work. While she paid, she chatted casually to the cashier. "Please say some of those seedless grapes for me when you get the next delivery." The cashier nodded. "Of course." He looked toward the parking lot. "That car didn't come today." Ashley felt her chest tighten. "What car?" The cashier whistled slowly. "The expensive silver gray sports car. The guy who drives it has been here almost every day and night. He even sleeps in his car. Just strange. One would think someone who drives a sports car can afford an apartment." Ashley couldn't believe her ears. "The car comes here every day? Are you sure?" The cashier nodded. "Yeah, he usually comes just after 9 o'clock in the evening. I sometimes nap if the store is quiet, and the car is still there when I wake up." Ashley looked at the time on her watch. She had worked late, and it was already 9:30. "When did he start parking here?" The cashier shrugged slightly. "About 2 weeks ago. I don't know why anyone would want to sleep in their car. So." Ashley smiled politely because she didn't want to continue chatting to the cashier. "Yeah, strange. I must be going now. See you soon." She hurried home and washed her fruit before making a small fruit salad for dinner. Her phone beeped, and she saw an invitation from Galaxy to play a game. She often played at night after work to relax, but was too tired, so she sent a message. "Thanks, but I've had a long day and need to sleep. Maybe another time?" Galaxy answered back almost immediately. "Sure, next time. Sleep well." She read the message and put her phone down. Then, she opened the balcony doors and looked outside. Even without her binoculars, she could see there wasn't a single car in the parking lot that evening. She closed the balcony doors, drew the curtains, and went to her bedroom. She got ready for bed and tried to go to sleep. After tossing and turning, she got up and peeked through her curtains to take another look at the parking lot. It was still empty. She picked up her phone and checked Latham's status on the messaging app. He hadn't updated it in days. She scrolled through a few social media sites to block out her thoughts and tried to fall asleep again. The night was long, and she slept poorly. When she woke up, tired and sleepy, she heard the sound of rain outside. She quickly looked out the window, but the parking lot was empty. She thought that maybe Latham had decided to sleep at home. She watched the parking lot for the following 3 days, but she never saw his car. The cashier confirmed that he hadn't seen the car either. Ashley thought that Latham had finally given up, and she wasn't sure if she felt guilty or relieved. That weekend, Ashley decided to go visit Jonathan and Nancy at their house. She knew Nancy was pregnant with their first child and wanted to spend as much time with her as possible before the baby arrived. Esther had had the same idea and was already at Nancy's. The two of them were chatting and laughing nonstop. Nancy's cheeks were rosy from laughter. "Esther, you should ask Helga to check on you." Her treatment helped me fall pregnant much faster than I thought it would. I also haven't had morning sickness. I've just been tired and hungry." Esther nodded. "I'll speak to her once Xavier and I are married." Nancy giggled. "Hurry up. We have to have our babies together. If you fall pregnant after your wedding, there'll only be a few short months between them." They saw Ashley approaching, and Nancy greeted her excitedly. "Hello, Ashley. You're just in time for those delicious pastries you enjoyed last time you were here." Ashley's eyes lit up. "Did you get them from the bakery downtown?" Nancy smiled and handed Ashley a plate. "Yeah, I woke up yesterday with a sudden craving for them, so Jonathan sent one of his men downtown. Luckily, he bought a huge box because I've almost eaten all of them." Ashley took a large bite. "Delicious. I have the best brother." Nancy's eyes twinkled. "Talking about good guys, tell us about Peter. I asked him about you the other day, but he didn't say anything." Ashley sighed. "There's not much to tell you. We're just friends." Nancy smiled politely, but she began to think there was more to it than what Ashley had made it out to be. It was a lovely day, and they decided to take a walk. Ashley had excused herself to use the toilet when she overheard Jonathan talking on the phone. "Jack, call the specialists at the hospital and make an appointment as soon as possible. Also, find another nurse for Latham. Let me know when everything is sorted out. I'll go see him then." Ashley, who was in the bathroom eavesdropping, gasped when she heard Jonathan mention a specialist. What's going on with Latham? Why does he need a specialist? She wondered. She was dying to find out, but didn't want her brother to know that she had overheard his conversation. She was distracted and withdrawn for the rest of the afternoon. After taking a walk with Nancy and Esther, she said goodbye to Nancy and left with Esther. After the luncheon, Nancy felt tired and went upstairs to take a nap. She lay down on the bed and touched her belly happily. She was already starting to show. Jonathan was going to take her to the Davis Group's private clinic for a checkup later that day. She wondered what the ultrasound would reveal and whether Helga had been right when she told her she was having more than one baby. She was so exhausted that, despite her worries, she fell asleep almost instantly and woke up at 4 in the afternoon. She was going to be late for her appointment, but she knew her private doctor would wait for her. When she and Jonathan arrived at the clinic, the doctor drew blood from her and then sent her to get an ultrasound while he waited for the results. The obstetrician smiled as they walked in. "Good afternoon. You can take off your shoes and lie down on the bed over there, Mrs. Davis. There's no need to be nervous." That's an understatement, Nancy thought. Her heart was beating so fast she thought she would faint. She couldn't wait to find out if she was having twins. The obstetrician lifted Nancy's blouse and applied gel on her belly. "This might feel a bit cold at first. I apologize." She then put a transducer on her stomach and began to move it around. An image appeared on the monitor immediately. Jonathan took a deep breath and stared at the screen intently, not daring to make a sound. He could see the uterus and tiny embryo inside. He glanced at the doctor anxiously, waiting for her assessment. The latter narrowed her eyes and frowned, moving the transducer around some more. She then stopped and enlarged the image on the monitor to take a closer look. "What is it, doctor?" Jonathan asked. "Is something wrong?" The obstetrician broke into a smile and looked at both of them. "Congratulations! You're having triplets." For the first time in his life, Jonathan was speechless. He thought that nothing could surprise him, but the news had caught him completely off guard. Nancy was equally stunned. "Triplets?" she thought, her mind racing. "Are we going to have 3 babies?" Jonathan cleared his throat. "Are you sure? Maybe there's some mistake. Are they all healthy?" He broke out into a cold sweat and began shaking. He had read about the risks of carrying triplets. How was Nancy going to survive the pregnancy? He wondered. What if the embryos don't develop in the same way? Why don't we take a look together? The doctor suggested. She pointed to the screen. See there? That's the first one. If you look closely, you'll see the cardiac activity. Jonathan leaned in and squinted, following her finger. He then nodded. What about the other two? She moved her finger to another area of the image. There's the second one. Its heartbeat is also very healthy. She recorded the data and pointed to the third embryo. And that's the third. She pressed a button on the ultrasound machine, and they could suddenly hear the heartbeat. I can hear it, Nancy cried joyfully. What a wonderful sound. I can hear it too, her husband said, choking back tears. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, you have 3 healthy babies on the way, the obstetrician told them proudly. You have nothing to worry about. She printed out the ultrasound image, handed it to Jonathan, and then gave Nancy some tissues to wipe the gel off her abdomen. They left the exam room a few minutes later. I can't believe we're having triplets, Jonathan said, his eyes wet with tears. She touched his cheek and smiled. The powerful, successful chairman of the Davis Group suddenly seemed like a nervous, expectant, ordinary father-to-be. Yes, she whispered happily. This is happening. It's nothing short of a miracle. He hugged her tightly. Just promise to take it easy for the rest of your pregnancy. She made a face. But I'm so excited. I feel like jumping up and down. You can punch me in the chest from time to time instead, he teased. She laughed and raised her fists. I can't believe you have 3 little lives growing inside of you, he said. Show me the ultrasound image. I couldn't see the monitor very well lying down. He pointed to the embryos in the image. Look, they're all here. 1, 2, and 3. She had never seen him so happy. He was grinning from ear to ear. Can you imagine those tiny little things developing into full-blown babies with hands and feet? It's a miracle, just like you said. Thank you for this. No wonder I've been so hungry lately. They're all fighting for food in there. He burst out laughing. I can just picture them banging their forks and knives on the table at dinner, demanding food. How are we going to feed all those mouths? They returned to the gynecologist's office and showed him the ultrasound image. The doctor congratulated them and asked them to have a seat. I have another piece of good news. Nancy, I just got the results of your blood test, and everything seems to be normal. There are no signs of anemia. Your weight is ideal for this stage of your pregnancy. If you take care of yourself and come to your regular appointments, everything should go smoothly. They thanked him, left the clinic, and were about to get into their car when Jonathan got a phone call from Jack. Sir, I've arranged for Latham to see the specialists at the hospital you told me to. It turns out he has chronic appendicitis and requires immediate treatment. I'll go see him now. Jonathan turned to Nancy. Do you want me to take you home first? She shook her head. No, I want to go with you. Okay. Appendicitis isn't contagious, so it shouldn't pose a risk. Latham had been working late at the office ever since he returned from Cuba, completely neglecting his health. A few days ago, he had been on his way to Ashley's neighborhood in the evening when his car had broken down, and it had had to be towed to a garage for repairs. He had decided to take a cab back to the office after and sleep on the leather couch in the lounge area. The following day, he had felt a strong pain in his stomach. He had gone to the hospital, and Jonathan had arranged an appointment with a specialist, who had told him he was suffering from a chronic appendicitis and dehydration. He was lying on the hospital bed, hooked up to an IV line, when Jonathan and Nancy went to see him. He had received medication, but looked extremely pale and weak. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Jonathan signaled to him to stay quiet and sat down in a chair next to his bed. Latham, just listen to me. I spoke to your assistant today, who told me that you've been working non-stop ever since you came back from Cuba, running from one meeting to another and sending emails to your employees in the middle of the night. The gastro specialist informed me that you hadn't been eating properly and were severely dehydrated when you came to see him. That's part of what caused your illness. Latham nodded. Does this have something to do with Ashley? Jonathan asked. Are you deliberately torturing yourself because you think you let her down? Or are you simply neglecting your health because of your work? You don't need to answer me. I just want you to think about it. Latham looked at him and then closed his eyes. Even if he could speak, he wouldn't know how to respond to Jonathan. He knew his friend was right. Ever since he had found out that Ashley was dating Peter, he had stopped eating properly and had been suffering from insomnia. He took short naps at work and in his car outside the convenience store in Ashley's neighborhood. But at night, he lay awake, thinking about her. Latham, you need to take better care of yourself, Jonathan continued. You can't go on like this. Think about what you want. The doctor came into the room just then, and Jonathan got up to speak to him. Nancy smiled at Latham and took his hand, telling him to get better soon. Later, as she and Jonathan left the hospital, Ashley texted her to ask how she was feeling. I'm a bit tired, but otherwise okay, Nancy texted back. Jonathan and I just left the hospital. We were visiting Latham. She hesitated for a moment before sending her the name of the hospital and his room number. Though she supported Ashley and Peter's relationship, she also felt sorry for Latham and had mixed feelings about the situation. She knew that Ashley's feelings for Latham ran much deeper than her feelings for Peter, whom she had just recently started dating. I wish Latham would get his act together, Nancy thought. He's been down in the dumps ever since he came back from Cuba. I miss the old Latham. She had become quite emotional ever since her pregnancy and couldn't stand to see others suffer. She sent another message to Ashley. Latham looks terrible. He's lost a lot of weight recently. We told him to take better care of himself. We're going back to see him tomorrow. What is he being treated for? Chronic appendicitis. He's been working himself to death and doesn't eat or sleep properly, which doesn't help. He can't go on like this. I hope he's learned his lesson. Ashley began to type a reply, but then deleted it. She didn't know what to say. Nancy sent her another message. Jonathan and I are going home now. I'm feeling a bit tired after today's checkup. Ashley responded, telling her to take care of herself and promising to drop by again soon. Nancy got into the car with Jonathan, half hoping that Ashley would visit Latham in the hospital. Ashley hesitated when she checked the time. It was late evening, and visiting hours at the hospital were over. But she decided to take the risk, and she grabbed her car keys. When she arrived at the hospital, she went straight up to Latham's floor and found his room. It was already quite late, and there were only a handful of nurses in the ward. The corridor was quiet and dimly lit. She tiptoed up to the door and gently pushed it open. She turned around before going in and saw two nurses staring at her. They had been given explicit instructions by Nancy to let her visit the patient, so they merely nodded to Ashley and signaled her to go in. Ashley breathed a sigh of relief and tiptoed over to Latham's bed. He was sleeping soundly, and she could hear his even breathing. There was only a faint light in the room, so she leaned in close and noticed that he had lost even more weight since the last time she had seen him in front of her apartment. His face was drawn and pale, and his cheekbones stood out prominently. She reached out instinctively and touched his face, but he didn't move. She caressed his cheek for a long time, remembering that night at the hotel in Miami ages ago. He had looked so much healthier then. She sighed and looked out the window at the darkness. Ashley realized that she still loved him. No matter how hard she tried to forget her feelings, they kept resurfacing, along with all the memories of their time together. She pulled up a chair and sat down next to his bed. She had no idea how much time passed, but she was getting tired, so she put her head on the bed and fell asleep. Later that night, she felt Latham moving, and she woke up with a start. Luckily, he was still asleep and didn't notice her there. But just as she was about to put her head back onto the bed, her phone rang. Ashley jumped out of her chair when she heard the shrill sound of her phone. She quickly muted it and hid under the bed, hoping Latham wouldn't wake up and see her there. She heard him mumbling something and listened closely. "Water. Get me some water," he murmured, still half asleep. Ashley looked at the door to see if the two nurses would come in, but Latham's voice was barely audible in the quiet room. She slowly got up, checked to make sure that his eyes were still closed, and poured some water from a jug into a plastic cup on the nightstand. She then found a straw and carefully put it to his lips. Latham instinctively parted his lips. He had drunk almost half of the water when he suddenly murmured her name in his sleep. He must be dreaming about me, she thought. She recalled when he had first kissed her, he had repeatedly called her Olivia, but now he was saying her name, and she was filled with several emotions. She held the straw to his lips for a while longer, and then she put the cup back onto the table, grabbed her bag, and tiptoed out of the room. She went up to the two nurses in the corridor. "Please don't tell him I was here." She left the hospital and drove straight home, wondering why Latham had called out her name. Is he in love with me? Or does he feel guilty for the way he treated me? She thought. She then pushed him out of her mind, reminding herself that he had let her down too many times. In another area of town, dozens of excited fans were waiting to catch a glimpse of Ezra after the concert. The band was going to be traveling south to continue their tour the following morning, and Hannah was going to Pittsburgh for a few days to do some research for her upcoming article. Ezra waved at his adoring fans as he and Hannah left the venue and got into their car. Ezra instructed the driver to drop Hannah off first, since it was late. When they arrived at her apartment building, he accompanied her to her front door, oblivious to the man in the baseball cap and sunglasses who had been following them. "Take care, Hannah. See you soon," Ezra said. He wanted to say something else, but stopped himself and gave her a big hug instead. She stiffened and patted him on the back awkwardly. "Good luck on your tour." He pulled back and looked deep into her eyes. "Are you going to be okay on your own?" She nodded and went inside. She stayed up for another hour to update her social media profile and read the reviews about their latest concert. The next morning, she packed her bags, said goodbye to her parents, and got into her car. She was driving out of the parking lot when she saw a man waving at her on the street. Puzzled, Hannah rolled down her window. "Hi, I'm so sorry to bother you," the man said. "I need some help parking my van. I just got my driver's license, and I'm afraid I'm not very skilled." She nodded. "Okay, no problem." She got out of her car and walked to the other side of the street, where the man stood beside his van. "Just get in, and I'll stand here and help you park," she told him. Before she knew what was happening, the man suddenly signaled to someone inside the van, and two men and two women jumped out and surrounded Hannah. She screamed and tried to run back to her car, but they blocked her path. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, panicking. "We want you to leave Ezra Fitzgerald alone," one of the women replied with a sneer. Hannah was stunned. "What are you talking about? Nothing is going on between us. We're just friends." "Oh, really?" one of the men said. "We saw him dropping you off last night. You can't fool us." "Enough with the chit-chat," the woman said impatiently. "Let's teach this slut a lesson." The two men grabbed Hannah and pushed her to the ground aggressively, face down. "Get the rats," they instructed the women, who rushed over to the van and returned with a large cardboard box. Hannah screamed at the top of her lungs, but the street was empty that morning and no one could hear her. The men held her down as the women emptied the contents of the cardboard box on her back. Hannah burst into tears as dozens of loathsome rodents squeaked and crawled all over her. "Serves you right," one of the women said, glaring at her. "Ezra belongs to us. You have no right being with him." Then, they brought over a bucket and poured ice-cold water over her. Hannah lay in a helpless heap on the ground with her eyes closed, sobbing uncontrollably. Suddenly, someone picked her up. "Damn it! What the hell is going on here?" Her eyes flew open, and she stared up at Brock's angry face. "Are you okay?" he asked her. She nodded, though she was still shaking. "I'm fine, but I thought they were going to kill me." He hugged her to his chest. "Don't worry, I'll handle this." He put her down gently and confronted Group, who had rushed back to their van as soon as he had arrived. Brock knew that Hannah had been playing with Ezra's band the previous night and had seen her social media profile about her trip to Pittsburgh. He had driven over to her parents' place at dawn that morning to speak to her, but had fallen asleep in his car in the parking lot. Later, he had been woken up by the sounds of screaming on the street and had rushed over to see what the commotion was about. He wanted to kill the thugs when he saw that they had attacked Hannah. She had only recently recovered from her depression, and he knew how fragile she still was. His heart went out to her as she hung on to him and trembled uncontrollably. After he had put her down, Brock took off his jacket, draped it over her shoulders, and rolled up his sleeves. Hannah watched anxiously as he approached the van, swinging his fists. The three men were no match for his strength, however, and he quickly knocked them down. She stared in admiration at his strong muscles and heaving chest, thinking he looked incredibly sexy just then. She looked at the empty bucket next to her and wondered whether she should give it to him in case he wanted to whack them on the head, but he didn't seem to need any help. One of them was seriously wounded and spat out a broken tooth. "I'm going to kill you, you bastard," he yelled at Brock. He pulled himself up and raised his fists. Brock confronted him, ready to kick him to the ground, when he suddenly felt a sharp, piercing pain just below his left shoulder blade. He swung around and saw one of the women standing behind him with a knife in her hand. She had been hiding behind the van, so he hadn't seen her. She dropped the knife when she saw the look in his eyes and took a few steps back. Brock became dizzy and unsteady on his feet as the pain shot through his body. Hannah screamed and rushed over to him. "Brock, are you okay?" Her voice was trembling, and she put her arms around him for support. He opened his mouth to reply, but he was too weak. Frightened, the three men pulled themselves together, got into the van with the two women, and drove away at full speed. Hannah carefully sat Brock down by the curb and checked his wound, which was bleeding badly. "It's okay, Han," he said in a whisper. "I'm fine. Don't worry about me." "You're not fine. You've been stabbed. Just relax and take deep breaths." She wanted to call an ambulance, but realized she had left her cell phone in her car. Brock pointed to his jeans pocket. "Use my phone. The passcode is 1013. She took his phone out, quickly unlocked it, and called 911. "Hello, my name is Hannah March. I need an ambulance right away. My friend was just stabbed on the street." She gave the dispatcher all the details and then burst into tears. "Don't cry. Everything's going to be fine," Brock reassured her after she hung up. "Why don't we wait in your car?" She helped him to her car, then she got in. Her hands were shaking and were stained with his blood. "Don't be scared," he said. "The ambulance will be here in a minute." She nodded and forced herself to calm down. They sat in the car for what seemed like ages. Hannah glanced at Brock and noticed that his shirt was soaked with blood. "Why aren't they here yet?" She pounded the steering wheel with her fist. "Maybe I should just drive you to the hospital." But a moment later, they heard the sound of sirens on the street, and the ambulance pulled up next to their car. Two paramedics jumped out, and after checking Brock's wound and cleaning it, helped him onto a stretcher and put him in the ambulance. They told Hannah the name of the nearest hospital they were taking him to and drove away with blaring sirens. When Hannah arrived at the hospital's emergency ward, Brock was already being wheeled into surgery. She sat down on a chair in the waiting room, anxious and scared out of her wits. She wanted to ask one of the nurses how Brock was doing, but they were running around, tending to other patients. She looked down at her wet, dirty clothes in dismay and wondered when she could go home and change. After waiting for an hour, she called Ashley and told her to come to the hospital. Sometime later, she heard a doctor call her name and jumped up. "How is he? Is he going to be okay?" Luckily, it wasn't a deep cut and didn't cause any permanent damage. He had to have a minor surgery to stop the bleeding, though, and he needs to rest for at least a week. She sighed with relief. "Oh, thank goodness. Can I see him?" He nodded and led her to a private room where Brock was hooked up to an IV drip. He was sleeping soundly. "We gave him some medication for the pain, so he's going to be a bit drowsy for the next few hours," the doctor said. After he left, Hannah went over to the counter, filled out Brock's details, paid for his treatment, and returned to his room. Ashley had just arrived and turned pale when she saw her brother lying in the hospital bed. "I can't believe this. What happened?" Hannah put her arms around her. "I'm so sorry. He got stabbed when a bunch of thugs attacked me this morning in front of my building. The doctor said he's going to recover, though." Ashley was so shocked by Hannah's appearance that she barely heard what she said. Ashley noticed that Hannah's hair was a mess and that she was completely soaked. She also saw traces of blood on her white shirt. "Those maniacs pushed me to the ground and poured water all over me," Hannah explained when she saw Ashley's astonished expression. "A woman who was with him knifed Brock in the back while he was fighting them, so that's where the blood stains come from. I was helping him to the car after they escaped." Ashley shook her head. "I don't get it. Why did they attack you?" "I don't really know. They were crazy fans of Ezra's who were jealous of my relationship with him. They threatened me. Your brother saved me in the nick of time. Who knows what else they would have done to me if he hadn't shown up. I'm sorry. This is all my fault." There she goes again, blaming herself for everything, Ashley thought with sympathy. Just then, Brock, who had woken up and overheard them, whispered, "Anne, there's nothing you could have done. This isn't your fault." Ashley rushed over to his bedside. "How are you feeling? Hannah scared me half to death when she called and told me you were in the hospital." Brock smiled weakly and looked at Hannah. Ashley noticed the look on their faces as they exchanged glances. "I guess it was worth it if it brought them together," she thought. Hannah walked over to him and lowered her eyes, afraid to meet his gaze. "Are you in any pain, Brock?" He was surprised by the emotion in her voice. She cares about me, he thought happily. Even though we're divorced now, she still has feelings for me. "I'm all right. Come closer." She stared at his outstretched hand hesitantly, not daring to move. "I can't sit up, otherwise the stitches may rupture," he said. "Don't worry, I won't bite." She approached slowly and took his hand. He wrapped his fingers around her hand and squeezed it tightly. Ashley coughed loudly, indicating that she was still there. "I don't want to be a third wheel, so I'll go talk to the doctor." "Can you also go across the street and get some new clothes for Hannah?" her brother asked. She's soaked to the skin. "Sure, I'll be back in a jiffy." She left the room, and Brock and Hannah were alone. Hannah bit her lips. "Thanks for saving me earlier. I don't know what I would have done without you." His hand tightened around hers. "Were you afraid, Han?" "I was scared to death of the rats and the thugs, but I felt safe in your arms," she thought. What had frightened her the most, however, was the stabbing. Watching Brock almost collapse had shaken her to her core, and she had thought she would never forgive herself if something had happened to him. She would gladly be attacked by 1,000 rats if it meant saving his life. She sighed. "I thought you were going to die." He gazed up at her and couldn't believe what he was hearing. He realized that she had been more afraid for him than herself. "I was right," he thought. "She does care about me." They were silent after that, holding on to each other's hands. Brock was still drowsy from the medication and soon fell asleep again. Ashley returned a half hour later and stopped at the door when she saw that Brock's eyes were closed and Hannah was staring at him intently, still holding his hand. Ashley was so touched by the scene that she secretly took a picture of them with her cell phone. She then cleared her throat and walked into the room. "I bought you some trousers and a shirt, sis." She handed Hannah a bag. "You can change in the bathroom over there. I'll watch over Brock." Hannah turned red with embarrassment when she heard her call her sis. She took the bag without a word and went to the bathroom. She closed the door behind her and looked anxiously in the mirror at her dirty and disheveled appearance. She took off her wet clothes, washed her arms, legs, and face in the sink with soap and lukewarm water, and patted herself dry with a towel. She quickly threw on the clothes Ashley had bought for her, fixed her hair, and grabbed the towel. "What do you want with that?" Ashley asked, pointing to the towel when Hannah returned to Brock's bedside. Hannah blushed. "I want to clean him up a bit. His face and hair are really dirty." Ashley turned away so Hannah wouldn't see the huge smile on her face. "I think my brother's going to be hungry when he wakes up. Why don't I go and get some food for us while you stay here?" Before Hannah could say anything, she was gone. She must feel awkward around me, Hannah thought. She looked at Brock's face and hair and bent over him with the towel to wipe the dirt away. He was only half asleep and woke up when he felt the soft cloth on his face, but he didn't open his eyes. He didn't move or make a sound as Hannah gently wiped the dirt and dried bloodstains from his forehead and cheeks. She stared at his high cheekbones, straight nose, and long eyelashes, amazed at how attractive he was. He has such soft and smooth skin, she thought. I can't believe I'm only noticing it now, even though we were together for quite a while. He was so different from his usual self. Hannah thought he looked like a fragile doll just then, peacefully lying in the hospital bed. Why can't he be like this more often? She wondered. She preferred his soft side to his strong, sometimes even aggressive character. He had a fierceness about him that she had often found unappealing. But other times, like that day when he had saved her from those thugs, she appreciated his strength. Her old feelings for him began to surface. She finished wiping his face and hands and leaned over him to arrange his hair, unwittingly pressing her chest to him. He could smell the scent of her skin and felt her soft breath on his face. He opened his eyes and found himself staring directly at her cleavage. She didn't seem to notice, however, as she busied herself with his hair. Brock's breathing quickened, and he began to tremble under the bed cover. Ever since Hannah, he hadn't felt the same way about any other woman and had thrown himself into his work to forget about her. But now, as she leaned over him, her body touching his, he felt excited. She glanced down at him and was so surprised to see him awake that she dropped the towel. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you, she stammered. I don't mind. I could feel your touch. She turned red with embarrassment, and Brock smiled. It had been so long since he had seen that shy look on her face. You smell good, Han. What are you wearing? She lowered her gaze and took a few steps back. Let me take the towel back to the bathroom. She quickly hurried off. Brock was pleased. She dawdled for a while before returning to his bedside, careful to maintain a safe distance. Ashley will be back soon, she told him. She went to get some food. He nodded. That's good. An awkward silence descended, and after several long seconds, she finally broke it. Thanks again for saving me this morning. No problem. She was at a loss for words, racking her brain for a topic of conversation when he suddenly spoke up. I saw your social media post last night, in case you were wondering what I was doing in your neighborhood this morning. I came to see you before you headed off to Pittsburgh, and I fell asleep in my car. She stood there, stunned. I was afraid you'd hang up on me if I called. He continued, I wanted to talk to you before you disappeared again. I'd never hang up on you, Brock. Is that a promise? If I call you from now on, you'll talk to me? She nodded. Anne, don't get involved with Ezra. He pleaded. He's bad news. Look what happened today. Those fans of his were nuts. Although she knew he was using the attack as an excuse, She realized that he was right. I don't think I'll continue my tour with the band. Showbiz isn't my thing. I hate being in the spotlight. Brock was secretly pleased, but tried not to show it. That's a wise decision. No matter how hard they try and convince you to come back, just follow your instincts. You don't want to get attacked again. She nodded. I promise. After all, Brock's not always going to be around to protect me, she thought. What if those thugs had stabbed me instead of him? It may not have been as lucky. She thought about her parents. If something happened to her, their only child, they would never get over it. She made up her mind there and then to cut all ties with the band. Come over here, Han, Brock whispered, his voice full of emotion. What is it? My right hand is itchy. I can't scratch it because I'm hooked up to the IV drip. She sat down on the edge of the bed and took his hand in hers. Where does it itch? It's my palm. As she gently scratched it, he grabbed her hand. She tried to pull away, but he held on tightly. Don't let go, Han, he begged. Let's stay like this for a while. She felt the warmth of his hand spreading through her entire body and looked away, embarrassed. Are you thirsty? I can get you a cup of water. He shook his head, not wanting the moment to end. Then, he placed his other hand on top of hers, and her heart began to race. Just then, she remembered something that made her head spin. What the heck am I doing? She wondered. He's still engaged. This is inappropriate, even if he saved my life earlier. She pulled her hand away forcefully and looked at him straight in the eye. Brock, this is wrong. You have a fiancé. What would she think? We're only making things worse. Are you jealous of Lindsay? No, I'm not jealous. I'm just pointing out that we shouldn't be doing this. Han, I don't care about her at all. He reached out for her hand again. The engagement was just a temporary solution to get my father off my back. She stared at him in astonishment. It's true, he continued. I can't get into the specifics now, but I'm not going to marry her. I haven't even touched her. Brock, I don't see how this is any of my business. I'm only here because of what happened this morning. It doesn't change the fact that we're divorced. Han, I'm sorry for everything I did in the past. I promise to treat you better from now on. I meant what I said about waiting for me when I saw you the other day. She pursed her lips and said nothing. You're not seeing anyone, so when I'm free of Lindsay, we can get married again, he suggested. She stared at him in wide-eyed astonishment. I only want you as my wife, but my hands are tied at the moment because of my father. I'm just asking you to be patient while I sort this out. Please don't date anyone in the meantime. I don't know what to believe anymore. Her voice was trembling. I clearly remember you saying that you only married me because of the baby. Then, when I had a miscarriage, everything fell apart. How can I be sure you're sincere? I had to give my father some reason for why we were getting married, Brock said defensively. But once we were married, I fell in love with you. As for the divorce, I've regretted it every single day. It was the worst decision of my life. Hannah listened quietly without saying a word, thinking they had never had such an open and honest conversation like that before. She still had trouble trusting him after all they had been through, but she didn't doubt that he loved her. She let him hold her hand, wondering what to say. What are the chances of meeting someone I could fall in love with again? She thought. The other band members often teased her about Ezra, but she considered him no more than a friend. Brock was looking at her intently, waiting for her response. How about it, Han? Will you give us a chance? Hannah's throat tightened, and her heart began pounding in her chest. Just as she was about to reply, Ashley burst through the door carrying a paper bag. Hey, Brock. Glad to see you're awake. He looked at her with disappointment. He had been hoping to have some more alone time with Hannah. Hannah, however, felt a tremendous sense of relief. Ashley noticed the awkwardness between them and put the bag on the table next to Brock's bed. I got you some soup from the cafeteria. Now, if you don't mind, I have to go. My colleagues just called me. There's an emergency at work. Brock looked at her gratefully. The doctor told me you need to stay in the hospital for a few more days. She continued, I'll drop by after work again. She kissed her brother on the cheek, said goodbye to Hannah, and left. There was silence in the room after she closed the door. The tender moment they had shared earlier was gone, so Hannah busied herself with the food Ashley had brought. Are you hungry? The doctor said you should have only light foods for a while. Not wanting to put pressure on her to continue their conversation, he simply nodded. Okay, I can have a bite to eat. She handed him a bowl of soup in a styrofoam container. Careful, it's piping hot. Brock frowned. You're gonna have to help me, Han. I can't really move, and I'm afraid of spilling it. He's right, she thought. He's got stitches and he's hooked up to a drip. I'll have to feed him like a child. She grabbed a spoon, dipped it in the soup, and held it to his lips. He smiled ever so slightly as he gulped down the warm broth. She couldn't stand the intense look in his eyes as he watched her. Do you want something to drink? She asked him after he finished the soup. He nodded. She poured some water into a cup, found a straw, and raised it to his lips. Can you lift the cup a bit more? He asked. He took a sip. Her hand was right next to his mouth now, so he lowered his head and kissed it tenderly. She pulled back, shocked by the warm, wet feeling, and stared at him. He smiled, murmured something quietly, and drank the rest of the water in the cup. She was speechless. Thanks, he said. I hope you don't mind me kissing your hand. I couldn't help it. It's fine, she muttered, turning red with embarrassment. She got up and straightened herself. I guess I'd better go now. Okay. Thanks for staying with me. She was about to say goodbye when they heard a knock on the door. A policeman entered and addressed Hannah. Hi, are you Hannah March? We'd like to ask you some questions about this morning's attack in front of your building. Someone reported the incident to the police. Are you willing to make a statement? She nodded. Why don't we step outside? He suggested. They left Brock there and went into the corridor. Hannah told the policeman everything she knew and described the men and women who had attacked her. When they returned to the room, Brock was fast asleep. We can get his statement once he's discharged, the police officer told her. Please come down to the station with him at your earliest convenience. That evening, Ashley returned to the hospital with some of Brock's personal items. She was surprised to find Hannah was still there. I brought his toothbrush, some toothpaste, and some aftershave. I'll put them in the bathroom. Sorry I can't stay, but I have to get up early tomorrow morning. Take good care of my brother, sis. She left before Hannah had a chance to reply. Ashley hurried to the elevator and got in. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the button for Latham's floor. The moment she stepped into the brightly lit corridor, she had a funny feeling and slowly turned her head. Latham was standing in his hospital gown and a light jacket, not even 6 feet away. She froze, not knowing what to say. A man pushed past her impatiently. Miss, if you're not going down, please make way. I want to get into the elevator. She moved absent-mindedly and continued to stare at Latham, who was just as surprised to see her. Are you here to visit me? He finally asked. Sir, are you taking the elevator down? The man asked, getting in. Latham shook his head, and the door closed. Ashley was about to turn around and leave when Latham touched her arm. You didn't answer me. Are you here to see me? Her throat tightened, and she shook her head. No, it was a mistake. I got off on the wrong floor. But I saw you get out of the elevator just now, and you seem to know exactly where you were. My brother's upstairs. I was visiting him and accidentally got out here. She explained hurriedly. I thought it was the ground floor. He looked at her, disappointed. Okay. Well, I was just on my way down to get some fresh air. Why don't you join me? He had had surgery to remove his appendix that morning, and had been lying in bed for almost the entire day. Although he was under strict orders not to get up, he was restless and refused to let the nurse accompany him. They took the elevator down to the ground floor. It was dark and chilly outside. Ashley hugged her coat to her and glanced at Latham, who was only wearing a thin jacket. "Are you sure you want to go out? It's really windy out there." He looked around, thinking about the day that they had bumped into each other at the hospital when he had been there with Samantha. If she had told me how she felt about me then, I would never have let her go, he thought wistfully, and none of this would have happened. He pointed to some chairs in the hallway. "Why don't we have a seat over there?" They sat down. "What is Brock doing in the hospital?" he asked. "He got attacked by some thugs this morning. One of them stabbed him, but he's going to be fine." Latham took a deep breath and looked at her. "Ashley, I think I owe you an explanation." She looked down at her feet and said nothing. "The reason I almost married Samantha was because I thought she was carrying my child. That night at the hotel in Miami, I was so drunk. She snuck into my room and climbed into bed with me. She convinced me that we had slept together. I was never in love with her. I only care about you." Ashley's heart was racing. Finally, there was a ray of hope, but then she remembered all the sacrifices she had made for him. Is he only saying that because I helped his company get out of the mess they were in? She wondered. He was calling out Olivia's name that night we were in bed together. How can he claim to care about me? Latham reached out and took her hand. "I'm telling you the truth. Please believe me. I thought about us a lot during these past few months. I've fallen in love with you." His hand was cold and sent shivers down her spine. She wondered whether she should forgive him. So many things were still unclear in her mind. "I'll be out of the hospital in a few days. Just wait for me. I'll prove to you how I feel," he pleaded. Just then, a nurse came up to him. "There you are. I've been looking all over for you. You should return to your room. The doctor said you're not to move around after the surgery." He nodded. Ashley pulled her hand away and stood up. "I need to go. I have to work tomorrow." "I'll walk you out." She shook her head. "There's no need. A friend of mine is picking me up." She hurried away without looking at him. He stared after her, frowning. "What friend?" he wondered. "Is it Peter?" He had wanted to ask her about him, but didn't have the courage. He shook his head and took the elevator back up to his floor. That night, Hannah fell asleep in Brock's room and woke up the next morning when Ashley came by. She went out into the hallway to get some coffee when she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. It wasn't the first time she had felt it. Her period had been irregular over the past year, sometimes skipping months, or sometimes lasting more than a week. She had heard from a colleague that the hospital had a good gynecologist, so she decided to see if she could get an appointment. She returned to Brock's room to tell Ashley she would be back soon, and then she went over to the obstetrics and gynecology department. She gave her name and details to a nurse and sat down in the waiting room, where several patients were waiting their turn. The doctor, who was in his late 50s, finally called her into the examination room. She explained her problem, and he asked her to lie down so he could examine her. After the examination, he pointed to a chair facing his desk and cleared his throat. "It appears you have endometriosis. Do you often have very bad cramps when you menstruate?" She nodded. "What does that mean?" He remained silent as he scanned her earlier medical reports. Finally, he said, "The tissue that normally lines the inside of your uterus is growing outside of it. It can be quite painful and affect your ability to conceive. I also see that you had a miscarriage some time ago. If you'd like to have kids, you may need to consider other options." Hannah started trembling. "Isn't there some kind of treatment for it? What if I get better? Can I get pregnant then?" He nodded gravely. "You can certainly try. I'm going to write you a prescription for some medication to help relieve your symptoms and manage your irregular periods." "Will I be able to get pregnant after taking the medication?" Let's take it one step at a time. You can schedule another appointment with me in a few months. And what happens if my periods become regular again? Does that mean my uterus is back to normal? He looked at her. Endometriosis is very difficult to cure, but you can treat the symptoms and alleviate the pain. There's no guarantee you'll be able to conceive, but there's always hope. Hannah couldn't believe her ears and felt as if her world had just crumbled. She thanked the doctor and left the exam room. As she walked out of the waiting room, she realized she had left the prescription on his desk. She turned around and rushed back. The door to the doctor's office was slightly ajar, and she heard a conversation between the doctor and a woman. "Doctor, my husband and I have been trying to get pregnant for over a year. I don't understand what the problem is." "There's no problem. You have a perfectly healthy uterus. Just be patient and let nature take its course." "But I had an abortion before. Does that affect my ability to conceive?" "Not necessarily. If your uterus is healthy, you shouldn't have any trouble. Each case is different. I just had a patient in here who suffered a miscarriage a couple of years ago. It turns out she has endometriosis and won't be able to conceive." The woman sighed with relief. "Thank you, doctor. That's reassuring. We'll just keep trying for a baby then." Hannah rushed in after the woman had left, and she grabbed the prescription on the desk. "I forgot this. By the way, I couldn't help overhearing your conversation just now. Were you talking about me?" He looked at her awkwardly, not knowing how to respond. "I thought so." She angrily turned to leave. "There's no point in taking medication if I can't have a baby," Hannah thought with dismay. "The doctor just didn't want to tell me the truth. I'm barren, all because of that damn miscarriage." Since the divorce, she hadn't thought about getting pregnant again, but after her conversation with Brock, it occurred to her that she may want to have kids someday. She returned to Brock's hospital room. He was feeling much better that morning and greeted her cheerfully. Ashley was also there, so he didn't dare bring up their previous day's conversation. His sister took one look at Hannah's face and knew something was wrong. Not wanting to be a third wheel, she left after getting them some breakfast and coffee. It was quiet again in the room. "Do you need help eating?" Hannah asked Brock. Suddenly, the door burst open. She turned around, half expecting to see Ashley, but a little girl walked in instead. "Where's my mommy?" she asked, looking around. "She's gone. Where did she go?" Hannah thought she couldn't be more than 3 years old. She had a high-pitched voice and big blue eyes. She felt sorry for the child, who looked at them in bewilderment. "Why did my mommy leave?" the girl wailed, bursting into tears. Hannah exchanged glances with Brock and quickly went over to her. "I think you're in the wrong room, sweetie." She bent over. "What's your mommy's name? I'll help you find her, okay?" Hearing her soft, gentle voice, the little girl stopped crying for a moment and stared at Hannah. "She's very pretty. Her name is Mommy." Hannah picked her up and tried to soothe her. There. Everything's going to be fine. Let's go look for your pretty mommy." She nodded to Brock and then went out into the hallway, where she saw a woman anxiously looking for her daughter. "Mommy!" the little girl exclaimed, bursting into tears again. The woman smiled and rushed over to them. "Thank goodness you found her." Hannah handed the little girl over to her mother. "She came into the wrong room by mistake." The woman kissed her daughter happily. "You scared me half to death. Why did you run away like that?" She thanked Hannah again, and they left. Hannah watched them for a while, thinking about her doctor's appointment earlier. She then walked back to Brock's room, hanging her head. "Did you find the mother?" he asked. She nodded absent-mindedly. He didn't notice her downcast expression because he was picturing Hannah hugging their own child one day. If she hadn't had that miscarriage, we'd have a baby running around now, calling us Mommy and Daddy. "Han, let's get married and have a baby. What do you think?" She raised her head and met his expectant gaze. "Wouldn't it be great to have a little girl?" he asked excitedly. "I'd spoil her rotten. I wouldn't mind a boy either, but I'd be stricter with him." His voice trailed off as he remembered his upbringing. Then he made up his mind. "I wouldn't interfere with his life, though. I'd let him make his own choices and be supportive of him." Hannah stared at him, dazed. She broke out in a cold sweat and then began to shiver. He didn't realize anything was wrong and smiled at her. "We have plenty of time. We're both young. Maybe in a year or two." "Brock, I have to make a quick call. I'll be right back." She walked out into the hallway and called Jonathan. "Hey, Hannah, how are you?" He was slightly surprised to hear from her. "I'm okay, thanks. Listen, is Helga still staying with your mother? I heard she's very good. I'd like her to examine me if possible. I've been unwell lately." "No problem. I'll call her right away. I hope it's nothing serious." "Just some stomach problems. It's no big deal, but I'd like a second opinion." "Okay. I'll let you know as soon as I've spoken to her." He called her shortly after and told her to go over to his mother's house that evening. When Hannah arrived for her appointment with Helga that evening, she chatted with Carol for a while before going to see Helga in her room. Helga was reading a textbook when Hannah knocked on her open door. "Hi, Hannah. Why don't you have a seat over there so we can talk?" Hannah sat down while Helga took her blood pressure. "What seems to be the problem?" Hannah told her about her irregular periods and the reoccurring pain in her lower abdomen. "I saw a gynecologist earlier today who told me I had endometriosis and may have trouble conceiving in the future. I had a miscarriage about 18 months ago when I fell. I wanted to get your opinion about my chances of getting pregnant again." She looked at Helga hopefully, who simply nodded sympathetically. "Hannah, I'll be honest with you. You may have irreparably damaged your uterus when you had your miscarriage. That's not uncommon." Hannah turned pale. "Are you saying I can't ever have kids?" "It's not impossible for you to get pregnant again, but it's highly unlikely. Unfortunately, this sort of thing can't be cured. I can write you a prescription for some medicine to help alleviate the pain and make your periods more regular. But you need to be aware that you may never conceive." "That's exactly what the doctor said this morning," Hannah thought in despair. She had been hoping Helga would reassure her and suggest some miracle treatment because Nancy and Jonathan had been singing her praises. "Why can't she help me?" she wondered, trying to hold back tears. Seeing her expression, Helga reached out and took her hand. "Let me write you that prescription, okay? See if the medication helps, and we'll take it from there. I'll continue to monitor your progress. There are exceptions to every case, and perhaps you'll be lucky." She's saying I have no hope in hell, Hannah thought bitterly, but she forced a smile. "Thanks. I appreciate you taking the time to see me." After she left, Brock called her. "Hi, Ann. Did you pick up those things you wanted? Are you coming back this evening?" "I'm sorry, I can't. Something urgent came up at work." Latham left the hospital 2 days later. It was a cold, windy autumn afternoon, and he pulled his light jacket around him as he waited for a cab to take him to the office. Work had piled up while he had been away. After dealing with the most urgent matters, he looked at his desk calendar and remembered that the following day would be the first anniversary of Olivia's passing. He couldn't believe that time had passed so quickly. The next day, which was a Saturday, he brought some flowers and drove to the cemetery to visit her grave. It was still early, and all was quiet, except the sound of birds chirping. He placed the flowers on her tombstone and pulled out the weeds around it. A gust of wind rustled the leaves of the trees above him. "Hello, my love," he whispered. "I came to talk to you. Can you hear me?" There was silence, even the wind had died down. He knelt and put his hand on the tombstone. "Everything's okay with me now. I was sick for a while, but I'm back at work. My father passed away a few months ago, though." He paused for a while before continuing. We knew each other for 8 years, didn't we? Time has flown by. I'll be 30 soon. When we first met, I was so scared of everything. I thought I'd have all the answers by the time I reached 30. But I realize things have only become more complicated. Olivia, I've fallen in love with someone else. A gentle breeze ruffled his hair as if she were reaching out and touching him. He smiled. She's a wonderful person. I think you'd like her. He remembered the time he and Olivia had stopped by a wishing well. Olivia had already been very ill and weak, and she had prayed that he would find someone to grow old with after she passed away. He had grabbed her arm and told her not to say things like that, and she had looked up at him earnestly and said that it was her only wish. He wiped a tear away. I'm going to do my best to fulfill your wish, Olivia. I'll find Ashley and beg her to give me another chance. If you can hear me, give me a sign. Suddenly, the wind picked up again, and a colorful autumn leaf landed in front of him on the tombstone. He picked it up and whirled it in his hands. Thank you for giving me your blessing. I love you. He walked slowly back to his car and sat there for a long time, remembering the past. He thought about the first time he and Olivia had met, their long separation and subsequent reunion, and her last days. He cried softly, looking out the window of his car at the gray sky. He had believed back then that they would stay together for eternity. He had had faith in the power of love and had believed nothing could tear them apart. But then, their relationship had ended, and he had been devastated. He had never openly told anyone how much he had been hurting in the 4 years that they had been separated. They had finally found each other again, and she had explained why she had betrayed him. He realized that he couldn't live without her, but life dealt him another devastating blow. Olivia found out she had terminal cancer and had only a few precious months to live. He had yearned to return to his happier, carefree youth then, but had known there was no turning back. She had died in his arms, and he had never fully recovered from the loss. She had been his family, and had shown him what it was like to love someone purely and unconditionally. He often thought about their first meeting 8 years ago, and dreamed he could travel back in time and undo everything that had happened. He had never imagined he would find a love like that again, until Ashley came along. Olivia, I'm going to find her and tell her how I feel. I'll love you and miss you for the rest of my life, my darling, but it's time to move on. I won't make the same mistake of losing her. That same day, Brock was discharged from the hospital. The doctor had told him to stay the weekend, but he insisted on leaving. Ashley picked him up and took him home. He hadn't heard from Hannah in 3 days. She had told him she had urgent work matters to attend to and hadn't called him since. Though he was disappointed, it didn't occur to him that she was trying to avoid him. He planned to call her and ask her to meet him the following day. Later that evening, Ashley went to the supermarket to pick up some groceries. She was making dinner at home when the Thom pulled up in front of the grocery store at the corner of her street to buy some fruits and vegetables. He then walked over to her building, entered, and stopped in front of the elevator. A man in a baseball cap was standing there with a sinister smile on his face. Latham thought him a bit strange, but ignored him. It wasn't until he stepped out of the elevator and noticed the man following him that he became alarmed. He turned around to confront him, but the lights in the hallway suddenly went out. Did you kill my brother? The man asked in a hoarse voice. What are you talking about? What brother? My alcoholic brother. The man took a few steps toward him. He used to live in this building and often came to see the young woman here. Latham suddenly remembered the drunk lunatic he and Ashley had seen standing outside her door a few times. Jonathan had looked into him and had discovered he had an older brother who was serving a life sentence. Could this be him? Latham wondered. Did he escape from prison? The lights in the corridor suddenly came on again, and the face of the man in front of Latham became clear. There was a ruthlessness in his eyes and a ferocious-looking scar across half his face. "I only had one younger brother," the man said coldly. "He's dead, and you're going to be buried with him." Latham didn't know how the other party knew about his relationship with Ashley, and he sensed danger. When the man pounced on him, he quickly dodged to the side and avoided the knife that was coming at him. He didn't dare make a sound because he didn't know if Ashley was at home alone. He knew that he wouldn't be able to guarantee her safety if she heard noise and came out. "Your brother's not dead," Latham said, speaking rapidly. "I only sent him out of the country." "He is dead. I buried him with my own hands." Latham was shocked. "Then you should find the person who killed him, not me." "If you hadn't sent him overseas, he wouldn't have died." The man's eyes were filled with hatred. "My brother was a good man. He only ever watched that woman that lives here. He never did anything to her." He stretched out his leg across Latham's in an attempt to trip him. "She deserves to die too." Suddenly, aware of the dagger in front of him, Latham ignored everything else and grabbed it. He felt the sharp pain in his palm, and blood flowed through the gaps of his fingers, but he refused to give in to it. He held the dagger tightly. "I won't let you hurt her." He kicked out at his opponent. In their room, only a matter of yards away from the fighting going on outside, Ashley and Brock were side by side watching a variety show. Ashley knew that her brother was in a bad mood, and she was trying everything to coax him out of it. The sound of the television was loud, and the apartment was well soundproofed, so neither of them heard the fighting at all. Outside, Latham had snatched the dagger from the other man, but wasn't able to stand up. He could only swing the blade and take wild stabs at his opponent's legs. However, the other man had been in prison for several years, and he was used to scrapping. He had been taken by surprise by the move of the dagger, but he quickly recovered. With a backhand move, he held Latham's leg and wrestled him down the passageway. He dragged Latham to the edge of the stairs. "Once I let go, you'll end up down there, and you'll have to atone for what you did." "Your brother!" Latham suddenly called out. He looked back the way they had come. The man instinctively turned to look, and Latham took the opportunity to break free of his hold. He kicked the other man, who lost his balance and fell down the stairs. But a split second later, Latham felt a hand on his foot. He was also pulled off balance and followed the man down. Everything had happened in just a few seconds. Latham felt another sharp pain as he tumbled down the steep staircase. The man was holding his foot tightly, and they rolled together for more than 30 steps before stopping because of a bend. Latham had the sensation that his body was no longer his own before he fell into a coma. The last thing he saw before all went quiet was the man's head hitting a sharp object and lots of blood. Upstairs, Ashley and Brock turned off the television and went to their rooms to sleep. In a sleep-filled haze, Ashley thought she heard the sound of an ambulance and a police car. But because she slept with earplugs, she couldn't hear clearly. Although Brock couldn't do anything physical because of his stab wound, he could head to the company to work. He immersed himself in the jobs he had to do, but every time he had a spare minute, he would call Hannah. She never answered, although he really wanted to find her. He eventually gave up. Ashley only learned that something had happened to Latham a month after the incident when she arrived home. She had been on a business trip and had finally finished the project she had been working on. She put away her luggage and went to the supermarket nearby, where she bought some fruit as usual and got chatting to the cashier. "The guy that drives the sports car was quite handsome," the cashier said. "It's been a month. I wonder how he's getting on." Ashley immediately thought back to the sound of an ambulance that she thought she had heard. Her heart sank. "Which guy? What happened?" "The one who used to park here every day," the cashier sighed. "Didn't you know?" "It was late at night. He came in and bought some fruit for me, but I saw him leaving in an ambulance later that night." Ashley's face turned pale. She grabbed the cashier's arm, and her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. Are you talking about the one that drives the silver sports car? The man that patrols our area every night? Yeah. Why did he need an ambulance? Ashley felt a chill move through her body. I don't know. I heard there was a fight and that he fell down the stairs. The other person, who died on the scene, was some sort of fugitive. The floor of the passageway was covered in blood. I heard that from the cleaner. Ashley wasn't listening anymore. With shaking hands, she took out her phone from her bag. She found Latham's number and dialed it immediately. When she waited for the call to be answered, she shouted, pick up, over and over in her mind. She comforted herself with the fact that she hadn't heard anything about it from Jonathan and that he must be okay. The phone rang 7 or 8 times before the call was finally answered. At that moment, Ashley felt her heart leap into her throat. Latham's calm voice eventually came from the other end of the phone. Ashley? She inhaled sharply and made a sound of agreement. There was silence for a few seconds. Is there something you need from me? He asked in a calm and gentle manner. He didn't sound in any form of distress. She pushed her emotions aside as she asked her burning question. Did you come to our neighborhood last month? Yes. Did you get hurt? It was just a minor injury. I'm fine now. Ashley wanted to see him for herself. Where are you? I'm at the company. I've had to work a lot of overtime recently, so I'm quite busy. I'll come and find you. After putting away her phone, Ashley went straight to Latham's company. He had clearly passed on to the receptionist that she was coming because she was waved right through. Ashley nodded her thanks. She was very familiar with the way to his office, and she met a number of her ex-colleagues on her journey. They all seemed to be going about life as normal, which eased her worry somewhat that Latham had been badly injured. She knocked lightly on his door, and a familiar voice answered. Come in. When she entered, she noticed there was a scab on his left hand, but no other wounds on his body. He nodded slightly when he saw her. Hi, Ash. Take a seat. I just need to take care of something. He had called her Ash again. She was slightly surprised, but didn't think much about it. She focused on Latham and sized him up. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with him. He had lost weight due to his appendicitis a while back, but there was nothing else that she could see. He was wearing a white shirt, a dark tie, and black pants, and he looked exactly the same as when she had worked there. He suddenly looked serious and frowned slightly. His eyes locked onto the screen, and the keyboard tapping became the only sound in the room. It was quite a while before he spoke again. Have you had dinner? I'll treat you. Ashley shook her head to indicate that she hadn't eaten. That'd be great, thanks. Latham stood up, but he did it very slowly because his body had seized up after sitting for a long time. I won't be a moment. He then walked equally slowly to the closet behind him and took his coat. It was a dark gray color, and when he also took a plaid scarf that matched his navy blue coat, they looked quite harmonious. Let's go, he said, and he led Ashley to the elevator. At that moment, she felt any lingering doubts about his health disappear. Instead of heading to his car, he took her along a pedestrian-only street opposite the company. There's a wonderful restaurant down here that isn't well known, but does great food, he said with a smile. I've been eating lightly since my appendicitis. Ashley nodded. She noted that there was something slightly off about his expression, but she didn't know what it was. The two of them took a table, and Latham ordered the main dishes for both of them. Is there anything else you'd like? Ashley ordered a couple of desserts and gave the menu back to the waiter. Why did you come to find me today? He asked. She stopped breathing for a second and looked across at him. He quietly studied her face while keeping his own free of emotion. Ashley's heart immediately began to beat the drum of guilt. She knew that the person who had been injured a month before, and that he had more than likely been in the area to see her. However, he seemed quite distant and had chosen not to mention the incident. She wondered if he was keeping his distance because it was the first time she had seen him since he had been injured. She was aware that he probably didn't know that she had been to see him when he had been hospitalized with his appendicitis. She hated the thought of that and paused momentarily. But she wasn't the type to hold back, and she bluntly asked what she wanted to know. "Did you get hurt badly when you were in our neighborhood about a month ago?" Latham gave her a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Ah, you saw that my left hand was injured. It's completely fine now." He then moved the fingers of that hand to indicate that he had completely recovered. Ashley pursed her lips and felt the need to explain her inaction. "Sorry, I didn't know that you were injured. I've been away on a business trip and have only just come back." "It's all right. It's not a big deal. There's no need to make a fuss." At that point, Ashley was almost certain that Latham was angry because she hadn't invited him. She hadn't been able to express her feelings when she had seen him at the hospital, so he probably thought that she didn't have any. The trust between them had eroded, and they were suspicious of each other. She believed that he felt indebted to her because of her previous pregnancy and Edward's project, and he felt that she no longer cared about him at all. The dejection that she was experiencing swallowed any enthusiasm that she felt about seeing him. Her worries had gradually dissipated when she saw that he was safe and sound. But she was coming to the realization that they might not be good for each other. She sighed. There was clearly an attraction between them, but they couldn't seem to get along. The food was good, and the two of them ate while chatting occasionally. But a tacit understanding had developed that they wouldn't talk about feelings. In the end, Latham picked up his drink and touched it to hers. "I heard you're doing well at Jonathan's company. Congratulations." She smiled. "Congratulations on your company making good gains, too." He looked at his watch. "Have you finished eating? I'll go and pay the bill." "It's my treat," she said. Latham called the waiter over, handed him his card, and turned back to Ashley. "Your salary isn't much now. When you're promoted in the future, then you can treat me." He spoke naturally, as if everything that had happened between them in the past had dissipated, and they were in an ordinary meeting between friends. Ashley felt her hands clench into fists. She wasn't thrilled with that outcome. Latham retrieved his card, stood up, and put on his coat. "Are you driving?" "Yes, I'm parked downstairs in the company building." They left together, but she sensed that he was taking extra care as he walked. They reached the end of the pedestrian area, and Latham said goodbye at the entrance to the underground parking lot. "I won't see you off then," he said, "but I'm sure I'll see you again another day." Ashley nodded and took the elevator to the parking lot alone. He watched her disappear and called his own driver. As he was about to move off, a ball rolled toward him and landed beside his feet. My ball!" a small boy shouted as he ran over. "Could you pass it to me?" Latham moved a little, but he didn't get far before the boy was with him. The adults looked on anxiously at the stairs in front of them all. "Be careful, don't fall," they cautioned their son. They frowned at Latham as they passed by, giving the impression that they thought he hadn't been as helpful as he could have been.